Welcome everybody to the Celtics Double Take Podcast. Dylan McCaffrey and James Kwan here again today. The 2 seed Boston Celtics are 10-6 at the moment. We'll talk about the team's struggles against the Sixers and how they turn things around with the Cavs and Bulls. But first things first, as always, we have our best and worst takeaways from the last week. 1 minute apiece. James, as always, you can go first.
First of all, Dylan, I'm loving the clean-shaved look. A little bit of an even playing field now. But yeah, I'm going to say best thing, Tatum being back, I think it's a big deal for, any team to get their best player back. So it's kind of weird because we have, Brown, we have Kemba, so it's not, the same situation as maybe the Bulls and Levine, but, us getting Tatum back is huge, and he looked great in his return. So that's big for us. We're not the same team without him. We saw that, I think, in those Sixers games. But worst, man, Agent P, that Pritchard injury was scary, and I'm glad it wasn't worse. It looked a lot worse when it happened. In fact, I thought for sure his ACL tear. You don't like to see a knee go that way, but I mean, it's time for Teague and Carson to step up, right? He was kind of developing into somewhat of a dependable scorer at times, and kind of gets cut short right when the fire starts to pick up. So that was certainly disappointing. I'm just glad that he's relatively okay, and excited to see him come back in probably a month or something. But I don't know. How about you, Dylan?
Watching that live was scary, and we'll get back to that, but I'm going to jump into mine. The best thing for me this week was Jalen Brown. Jalen Brown is top 5 in the NBA in points per game.
Yeah.
We asked him to step up to be the second role on our team. He did that. When Tatum was gone, we asked him to be the leading man on our team, and we were able to win some games with just him and without Tatum. So I've been very impressed with Jalen, super happy with him. The worst thing for me is our big men defense. We'll get into it with these Sixers games, but it was a tough to watch Joel Embiid for 2 straight nights against Tristan Thompson. That was tough for me.
With everything changing in the world, Dylan, it's nice to see that some things never change,
Some things never change.
Some things never change.
We're how far are we? We're a month into the season. I think we've had the same thing every week. So yeah, let's just get straight into it. The last time we recorded, we were looking ahead to the Sixers, Cavs, and Bulls games. Thankfully, all those games happened. We thought we were going to maybe get Tatum back versus the Sixers. We lost both of those games. And I was really confused for a second there because Tatum was out with COVID for 17 days. I thought it was supposed to be 10 days, at the most 14, and not forget symptoms, forget everything else. He tested positive 17 days before he played again. So that game against the Sixers, the second one, I really thought we were going to have him back, and we didn't. That was super frustrating. But we played 2 games against one of our biggest rivals, the Sixers, without our best player. We didn't look terrible, but it was there was some problems there.
Yeah. Here's the thing. We were in that game until the last 3 minutes or so. We had a lead. We were definitely competitive. And this is why I don't know if I like this 2-game series thing. I thought I did. I kind of went into it. I was like, oh, it's kind of like baseball, whatever. It'd be cool. But here's the thing. These games against the Sixers, don't get me wrong, we owned them in the playoffs, but there used to be great indicators of where our team was. At least in the last couple of years, it was a great indicator because we had 4 of them kind of spaced out throughout the year, and we can kind of check in. All right, how do we compete with one of the best teams in the East? Now we know how we look like against the Sixers without our best player. We got 2 games back-to-back of just not our best basketball. And that's just kind of a waste, in my opinion. I don't know if we're ever in a playoff setting. I'd certainly hope that we would have Tatum available. I don't think this is going to be what the matchup looks like if we meet in the playoffs. And it kind of just felt like a waste to me. I don't know. This Sixers team is definitely still good. I don't want to take anything away from them. But I don't know. I just think with Tatum, we win those games. What do you think?
I thought the first game was completely winnable. We held the lead for a long time. And then at the very end of the game, with about 4 minutes left, Simmons just went off. Simmons had a couple just
he had some steals.
They went on a
layups,
10-0 run.
I guess.
He was the catalyst for a run they went on there at the end, and that was just too much to come back from late at the end there. Yeah. But Brown and Smart had 20 plus that night. We saw some good things from our guys. Tice had 23 and 10. I'm pretty sure that's Daniel Tice's career high that night.
Yeah.
But not to overcome 42 and 10 from Embiid. 17 of 21 from the free throw line. And the refs don't love the Boston Celtics, but we were so inept to be able to stop Joel Embiid that we did foul him every time he tried to back us down.
This Sixers game, I think was fine. The officiating was fine. we'll talk about the second Sixers game, but this one I thought was okay. I think let's listen, man. I've been hard on Tice, and you will not find someone who looks at the faults of Tice more than me. It was a great game by him. He showed a lot of heart. Did he stop Embiid in any way whatsoever? No, but we know that he's not capable of that. And he put up his share. He put up anything we can kind of expect from him. But I don't know. I just want to, and I'm going to sound the Steelers. I'm going to sound like the Steelers. I'm promising so much in the Steelers every podcast. But I'm going to sound like them because of how they talked after that Browns loss. But I have to say it, man. Simmons, we're right back where we started. Like every year, we're right back where we started. We're saying, is he going to make the jump? Is he going to be this, I did not forget that we were comparing him to LeBron in his like rookie years and whatever. He was like supposed to be that good. I didn't forget. All right, maybe the standard now is 10, 10, and 10, but that wasn't ever the standard was 20, 10, and 10. The standard was maybe you'll have a jump shot by year 5 of his career. None of that has happened. And now he's putting up, we just did a video about LaMelo Ball and Tyrese Halliburton. You look at LaMelo Ball's numbers, and per 36, he's putting up similar numbers than than Ben Simmons. And so you have to look at Simmons and say, like, how is this acceptable that you're scoring like 11 points a game? That maybe you make some plays on defense to get your team back into it, but you're nowhere near the player that we thought you were going to be. And demanding the respect that you're trying to get, I mean, the Sixers must feel like idiots for not going and get Harden now. The team would be so much better.
I think that the team this year is way better suited to be around Simmons, though. Like, they went and got Seth Curry and Danny Green, and, like, they're playing a lot through Embiid. So I think that's why he was able to be a difference maker, because they're not relying on him to go create all their buckets at the end. Like, he was able to get steals and play hard defense and feed other guys. So I think it works better with him now. But you're right. Like, he won't be a number 1 option. Like, he was a number 1 overall pick in the draft. He won't be a top 3 option. He'll just be a playmaker until he can shoot the ball. But,
I mean, he looks lost in the half-court setting. He doesn't know where to be. He doesn't know where to go. And the Sixers, as soon as they start running the ball more through Seth or Tobias Harris or whatnot, I don't know what you do with him. If you're not in the transition, I don't know what you do with him. But I don't, I just have to make that known. I don't think Simmons is that good. I don't think he's the reason why we lost. I know he went on that run late in the game, and he makes a difference, especially on the defensive end. But that was never the expectation for him as X factor. It was number 1 option, and he's still not there. Going back to our number 1 point guard option, Kemba being back we didn't really mention it. It's a good thing. I will say I feel like some players have been timid. I don't know if you've seen the same thing. Since Kemba's return, I feel like some players like, Semi and others, they haven't been, that haven't had that same kind of aggressiveness. I don't know what you've seen from the players since Kemba's return.
Well, especially with Pritchard going down, like, Kemba being back is essential. Like, we need 20 minutes from a guard now, which he's going to give us. The first game, he didn't do anything that like really like inspired me very much, the Sixers. The second Sixers game, he had 20 points, and they were pretty efficient, and I liked what I saw from him. I think that the perfect version of this team is, like, we'll get around to this, but the Bulls last night, you had Tatum and Brown combined for 50. If you can slide Kemba in there, because Kemba didn't play, let Tatum and Brown still go off, but if Kemba can drop 20, just like creating his own shots and trying to feed the other guys, I think that's a perfect version of him. And I agree that, like, when your star player comes back, when your role players will regress a little bit. But I think that his limited minutes and just the way that this team works this year, I think that we're on a track that Kemba's going to be brought back into the offense and be given an opportunity to succeed. But I want to go back to the big men before we like round out Kemba, because Kemba had a good game against the Cavs. I mean, everyone had a good game against the Cavs, but Embiid in the first game, 42 and 10, 17 of 21 from the free throw line. Embiid in the second game, 38 and 11, 14 of 15 from the free throw line. Dwight Howard in both these games. First game, 10 rebounds in 15 minutes. Second game, 12 rebounds in 18 minutes. We were absolutely killed on the boards in both of these games. We were talking last time, like, we have a back-to-back. Like, the first game we lose, Brad's going to make some changes. We come back to the next game, we're ready to go. The second game, we had Robert Williams, which we didn't have in the first game. And we had nothing to stop Joel Embiid. We have nothing. That's the same reason we lost to the Knicks, is because we get killed inside. And there was more encouraging things in the Cavs game and in the Bulls game. But in those two games, we had no defensive presence inside, and we're getting killed on the glass. And it needs to be fixed. Like that is,
Yeah.
I think, the most glaring issue that like other issues I think might be able to improve, but this issue I don't see improving until we bring in someone.
Well, so the last two games after the Sixers, we obviously got just completely exposed on in the interior, right?
Yeah.
Something interesting I noticed is that in that Bulls win, Tristan Thompson did not take a shot. He did not attempt a field goal.
Yep.
And it's been that kind of way in the past couple of games. I think what Brad might be telling the big men is they got to focus up defensively. And aside from that big Tice game against the Sixers, I think him as well. I think they're devoting a lot more of their energy toward the defensive end in the last couple of games. And I think that shows, hey, the Cavs, they got some good big men. I mean, they don't have a Joel Embiid. But, in that game, in the Bulls game, I think we did a lot better of a job. And maybe that's a new route you go when you say, this is what we've been asking Brad Simmons to tell Tice Thompson this whole entire time is, yeah, you're not going to score the ball, but you might be our Dwight Howards. We need Dwight Howards. We need a guy who's just going to grab boards, do the dirty work, and out hustle the guy on the other team. Maybe that's what we have to get out of Rob Will and the crew. And maybe that's the new direction Brad's going. I don't know. Do you think it's just Thompson's just not a good player and that's why he's not taking shots anymore?
Well, I don't need Thompson to be taking a lot of shots. Like I want him to be taking like Rob Williams type shots where when the opportunity's there, like Rob, you can just go dunk it. And same with Thompson. Definitely not him trying to create his own shot. I don't trust anyone on our team to like have the ball in the post and do a post move and score. And I don't really want them to start because I feel like we know what Tristan Thompson has at this point in his career.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you brought up the Cavs game because the Cleveland Cavaliers are hogging all the big men in the league. They go out with Drummond, they bring in Jared Allen, and then JaVale McGee. And I assume it's just because they had so many more missed field goals than us and we were getting defensive rebounds. But after getting destroyed on the boards by the Knicks, getting destroyed on the boards by the Sixers, we out-rebounded the Cavs 55-34. So I don't know what happened between getting embarrassed by Embiid and then coming out. Maybe Drummond is just not that kind of guy, but we did put them in their place. So maybe there's like some spark that this team can find in that spot. But very different from the Sixers getting embarrassed to the Cavs game. I mean, we just couldn't miss. We were firing on all cylinders. Jaylen Brown now has the most points in NBA history in under 20 minutes played. I'll also say that Tice had 17 versus the Cavs. I mean, everyone had a great game. Tice also had 19 against the Bulls last night. 8 of 12, 3 blocks, 3 steals. And he's shooting 63% on the season. So we hate on Tice a lot, rightfully so, as a starting center. But I do think that he's like maybe one of the best backup power forwards in the league. If you categorize him as
Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny that you call him a power forward? Isn't that funny? Because he's not a center.
I think I agree. Here's the whole like crux of the Tice debate is like if you say like is he a good center? Like objectively no. But is he the best center on our team, especially last year? Unfortunately, kind of.
I guess, but here's the better question. Is it that we need Tice to play well, or is it that we need Tice to be the player that he needs to be? Like at the end of the day, like what we need to get over big men is it's nice when Tice is a rim runner, when he's active on the offensive end, when he's setting screens, he's in the pick and roll game with Kemba and Tatum and Brown, and he's getting involved. But it's the moments, it's more of like, all right, that's great you're scoring 20, but you can't give up 42 to Embiid. It's great that you're putting up 19, but I would like you to out-rebound the other center one game in your life. Like that, I want you to be a physical force inside. I'm glad that he's getting 19, 20 on given nights. We saw that last year when he would just randomly have like a 7 for 10 game from 3, like, just randomly. And listen, he's going to be serviceable for us going forward as long as he's not the number one option inside. But I'm not going to
which he is,
and that's why I'm going to get on him. And I don't want to gloss over this second Sixers game before as we get into the Cavs and Bulls, because I think it showed a lot about kind of us as a team inside and who the Sixers are and their new identity. Is that, listen, if we're going to lose to teams like the Pacers and the Sixers, who have great big men who are multifaceted and can take advantage of Thompson and Tice, then it doesn't even matter what we do in the regular season. It doesn't, because we're going to have to beat them in 7 games, and it's going to be 7 games of that. Maybe we don't have Tatum against the Sixers, but playoffs is a whole different deal. And I don't want to harp on this whole Tice thing. I want to say that this Embiid MVP season, it comes at a bad time for Tice to prove himself as this guy. I want to go into a little bit. I want you to speak upon, like, I guess, like, our ability to stop an Embiid or a Sabonis when it comes, or even a Bam Adebayo when it comes down to when it matters most.
Bam Adebayo or a Giannis, like, we started the year with the Tristan Thompson lineup because that was supposed to be a defensive lineup where we have Smart, Jalen, Tatum, Tristan Thompson. Like, that's 5 good defenders. And we haven't played good defense with those 5 guys, which is why it's kind of been thrown out a little bit. But we've seen versus Embiid 2 games in a row. Like, if we have Tatum, maybe we can win those games. But Embiid's getting 40 on us, and there's no one that can stop it. Maybe Taco can come in and do it, but the fact that Embiid can pull up from 3 and he's been shooting so well, it kind of makes it hard to bring Taco in those situations. And, you know, when we go into the games against the Bulls and the Cavs, like, we look better. But against Embiid, Bam Adebayo, Giannis, Sabonis, against the best in the league, we fall short. And Tatum and Brown can make up for that for a long time, but we get to the playoffs and we're playing Embiid, and then eventually we're going to play LeBron and Anthony Davis. It's an absolute necessity that we get a good defensive center, rebounding center. Someone like Andre Drummond would be nice, but just
I don't know.
It's hard to find that piece. It's hard to find someone that's going to stop Embiid, but to do a better job than Tice, we don't have to look super far.
That's true. And this whole Embiid MVP, I'm going to sound like a hater. This MVP tour that we're talking about, it's fraudulent. Like, the Sixers have had a pretty easy schedule. Let's look into it, because I'm serious. Let's look into it. The Sixers, again, who has Embiid and who has Embiid dominated, who have the Sixers beat? You look at the teams that the Sixers lose to, and it's teams that have big physical centers that can compete against Embiid. And when he faces opposition that is physical and slightly hard to deal with, they lose. Let's look at the Cavs early in the season. They lose to the Cavs. They got a lot of big men down in Cleveland, and they threw a lot of them at Embiid, and then the Sixers lost. Let's look at the Nets. They have to deal with DeAndre Jordan. I believe Jared Allen was still on the team at the time of that game. You look at the Nuggets, another loss against Jokic. You look at the Hawks, the 3rd loss in a row for the Sixers. They have Clint Capella. You look at the Grizzlies. You look at all these teams that have big men to compete with Embiid, and they lose, and he's not as effective. And it's not his fault that he gets to face the Hornets like 3 times and the Wizards twice, and us who don't have a big man to compete with him. It's not Embiid's fault. He's playing great, but come on, he's putting up these numbers because of the schedule. He's improved. Don't get me wrong. MVP, come on, this Sixers team is good. They beat us when we didn't have our best player, but they beat us. He's not LeBron. He's not Luka Doncic this year. He's not like I don't know where this conversation came from. Am I crazy? Am I just a hater? Like, you look at the facts.
I mean, he's the reason they beat us 2 nights in a row, because we literally couldn't stop him. We had to foul him every time, and he made all his free throws, so he put up 48 points a night. MVP is a big claim. Like, you have to be better than LeBron and Luka Doncic, which I don't think Embiid is, at least not from what I've seen those 2 games.
That's just my opinion.
So I've hated on the big men all season, and enough for this episode, that I do want to talk about some positive things. Tice scoring is positive. I do think that, like, when he's not given the task of being a center, that he is able to do a little better. So when Rob Williams came back and Tice could come off the bench sometimes, I don't know. I like Tice better when I don't have such high expectations for him to guard Joel Embiid. But then Carson Edwards, I loved in the Cavs game. I know everyone's doing well in the Cavs game, but in that game, for a period of like 5 minutes, we got the Carson Taco pick and roll, which I've just been waiting for like 2 years. It's the main Red Claw special.
It's the G League, the G League special.
And Carson had 18 points in 19 minutes. So you talk about Jalen's 33 and 19. Carson had 18 and 19. And 12 of those points were in 3 minutes. Like, every possession, they just ran through him. And he got 12 points in 3 minutes. Like, a couple possessions in a row, and he was getting some assists for guys. So Carson, with Pritchard out, with us winning by so much, Carson came in, and in college, he was the best scorer in college. He averaged
Yeah.
the most points per game.
Yeah.
So people were like, these last couple of years, like, oh, he's lost it. Like, I don't think Carson's an NBA talent. Like, maybe he's not an NBA talent, but he can score. That doesn't just go away. So he made his first shot that night. When he makes his first shot, he's a totally different player, as Scal said 100 times. So I loved what I saw from Carson. And then
take it easy on
Naismith,
Scal, man. He's picking up a new role.
Scal,
he's not a
Scal's
great broadcast guy, but yeah.
Scal, when he picks a topic to talk about, he goes for the fences. He goes all in.
He's got his mind on something at the beginning of the game for sure.
Naismith against the Cavs and against the Bulls went 3 of 5 from 3.
Yeah.
It's nice to see the best shooter in the draft making shots finally. He actually was in for the last 3 minutes against the Bulls last night, and Tatum and Brown were still in when he came in, and it got to be a 10-point game, and so it was nice to see him playing in a somewhat significant scenario. So Carson and Naismith both impressed me. Both of them are going to have to step up if Pritchard's going to be out, because we have the stars on this team, and then we have a lot of role players like Semi and Tyson, whoever, and then the rookies on this team are really the X factors on a lot of nights.
True.
So it's good to see them playing well.
Naismith not looking absolutely terrified when he's on the court. It's a good sign.
Yeah, it's been fun. I don't think Romeo's going to come back for a long time. So to see these guys play well is good. I think Pritchard is supposed to come back in 2 or 3 weeks, which is a miracle based on just his reaction to that whole thing. Yeah. It looked like, and not to trigger you, it looked like the Jeremy Lin torn ACL.
It did.
He's just he grabs it, he realizes, and he's just I'm done. And he starts crying. That's kind of what Pritchard did.
It was tough to see. I think he thought it was worse than it was.
What? You see the picture he posted on Instagram? It's him being guarded by Derrick Rose. I'll be back. Yeah, I think it was meant as a joke, but come on, man.
I think it was a very Peyton Pritchard post.
Yeah, I'll let it slide.
And you're right. I think we do need to give Naismith a little bit of credit. I said that he belonged in the G League. I still think he would have benefited off it. But yeah, I mean, he looks more now like he's not making terrible plays. I'm not gonna lie. He tried a step back move and banked in a 3 at the top of the key, and it's something that has a good result but looks terrible. But I want to talk about a guy who's really impressed me, and you mentioned in the beginning of this podcast, is Jaylen Brown. And just as a quick exercise here, I want you to guess whose stat line throughout the years in the first 4 years of his career. Guess if it's Paul George or Jaylen Brown. So the first mystery guy, we have 6.6 points rookie year, then 14.5, and then 13, and then 20. And then player number 2 is 7.8, 12.1, 17.4, and then 21.7. Who do you think is Paul George? Who do you think's Jaylen Brown?
When you listed off the first one, it sounded like Jaylen Brown, but it kind of plateaued. Whereas the second one, I think sounds more like Jaylen Brown.
So what do you think? You think it's the second one?
I think the second one.
The second one is Paul George. And this is what I'm saying, is that it's comparable. And the reason with the 14 to 13 year was 100% just because of Kyrie coming to town.
Yeah.
And, obviously you're playing with a top 5 point guard in the league. You're just not going to be as productive as a wing. But his numbers in his jump this year from 20.3 to 27.3, you have to look at it very seriously and say, do we have the next Paul George? And that's not a ridiculous thing to say anymore. And that's pretty substantial.
He's been awesome.
I mean, dude, if we have the player that Tatum is kind of evolving to be, and then we have Jaylen Brown, who's the next Paul George. I mean, where do we stand in terms of in 1 year, in 2 years? This is my whole argument of why we do not, by all means, do not trade these 2 players, because this nucleus, I don't want to be blasphemous, but it can turn into a Kawhi, Paul George type caliber duo that you build around. That we have some good supporting cast, we have some good developing players. I think we're getting better. I think we're on the up and up, and Jaylen Brown's a huge part of that.
I think that Jalen and Tatum are going to be awesome this year. Jaylen Brown this year is far exceeded my expectations. I think that just you listed off those points per game over the last 4 years. All of those points per game happened while he was at best the third option.
Yeah.
Even when he had 23 points a game, he's still the third option. So it's really encouraging to see him like ascend into the second option role. I think that it was born from the fact that if he wanted to score, he had to be efficient. He had to catch and shoot like Klay Thompson. He had to be able to just do one move, drive to the rim, play good defense. And so he was brought up in a way where he had to just take advantage of his scenario. And now he completely is, being for the last week, he was the number one option and he didn't disappoint. Marcus Smart also had a good week. Quickly before we move on to our next set of games, Marcus Smart has been doing a pretty good job running the offense. I liked what I've seen from him more recently than the beginning of the year. He had a couple 20-point games as well. If we have Tatum and Brown being their best versions of themselves, we have Smart being a defensive anchor and just like making the right play on offense. If he can shoot, that's a bonus. If Kemba Walker is 90% the version of Kemba Walker we need him to be, we have a super good team, and all we need is a good center, which is – it's been about 10 years of saying that on the Celtics.
And we got $40 million to make it right, don't we? So
we got 29-ish.
29. We have $30 million to make it right. And I've been hard on Ainge, but I think this is his time to shine. Listen, you haven't made a lot of good. Let's be real. The Romeo Langford versus the Tyler Hero, like what we could have had and what we got, is it's gut wrenching. It's nothing less than absolutely horrible. But Neesmith is, I guess, the jury's still out. But he can kind of redeem himself totally with all these wasted first round picks. If he goes and gets a player we need come the trade deadline, that's all it's really going to take. I really am. I'm that high on this whole Tatum Brown thing. It's everything that I want it to be. And you're completely right. Just like the Clippers, we actually have maybe more last year, but we actually have a lot of great pieces to surround our core of Tatum and Brown. So, yeah, moving on to the next 3 games, I'm feeling pretty good, really, no matter who we face.
So we have 4 games in the next week, maybe 3, because I think one's going to get canceled. But really quickly, before we jump into that, I want to talk about the Brooklyn Nets. We've only seen 3 or 4 games of them with all their starters, and it's been interesting because what we looked at was like this team's going to be unstoppable. What's going to stop them? We said last week or 2 weeks ago it was going to be if they can gel and if they can play defense. And for me so far, I'll let you go, but I've seen them gel and I haven't seen them play defense, which worries me. What do you think?
I think it's funny. They've done everything but win. Like they've shown everything that you want to see from them, but they just haven't been winning. I think it's a total effort thing, man. It's going to be so hard to motivate this team, especially as a rookie head coach in Steve Nash. Really hard to motivate this team. This is a team that if they get the 8th seed, like they think they're going to the finals. Like, that's the kind of mentality that they're under. And I think who plays better defense than the kid who, like the bench player who finally gets a shot to prove that he's worth being a starter? It's the effort. It's the, that fire, that intensity. I don't expect KD, Kyrie, and James Harden to have that kind of effort in the defensive end until later in the season. I'm going to give them a break. Their defense is horrible. They can't stop anybody. But I don't think they're trying to stop anybody. I'm serious. Like people, they rail on Harden especially, but Kyrie and KD, they're not playing good defense. You really think that they can't play good defense when they want to try? Like that they're not like top 1 percentile in the world kind of athletes that can play good? Like they can. When they want to turn it up, they will. I'm not really worried about the Nets. I'm sure we're going to see them in the playoffs if we make it to them. But, yeah, I mean, they got to figure something out. They got to make it to the playoffs. So, something's got to change.
The Nets, their defense was bad before they traded away Jared Allen, and now it's one of the worst in the league. And on top of that, I'm going to take a quote from Steve Nash that I liked a lot, which is that every team that is playing the Nets is like treating it like it's one of their biggest games of the season. Like, we're coming to Brooklyn to play like the new big 3. Like everyone's excited to play this team and like try and get a win out of them. So I can see how like Colin Sexton, like breathing out of his nose, like fire coming out of his ears, like can pull off some wins. Like that was an awesome game that he had. But what I've seen from this big 3, like putting them in like a vacuum, James Harden has taken a huge step down in terms of his usage. He's still dribbling a lot and stuff, but he's way more focused on assists. He has had a couple games under 20 points, which you're not usually used to seeing from him. He's taken definitely the least amount of shots out of Kyrie and KD. So when you looked at like Harden, KD and Kyrie, like there's only one basketball. How do these guys share it so much? Someone needs to take a step down. No one has the ego to take a step down. Harden so far has had the ego to be able to take a step down a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know if that's the right call. I feel like Harden should be the second scorer and Kyrie should be the third scorer, but Kyrie has been taking the most shots still. I don't know if it matters because they're all so good. Like, I think that if Harden takes a step back, then they're going to have a ton of success.
Yeah. I think people, because of how Harden's been playing in the last 3 years, like they expected him to not be able to kind of gel into something new or play with people that are better than him or maybe on par with him, you know? And he's kind of proven people wrong in that instance. And this is what I don't want to go back to this, but I'm going to. The Sixers would have totally been better with Harden. And what Harden has shown to be able to be like, oh, you want to make me the main facilitator? He's proved in the last 3 years he can be a point guard. And that's what he's doing right now. And like Kyrie has had to play off the ball before playing with LeBron. I think these players are really well equipped to kind of gel in that way. But yeah, man, I think Harden showing his malleability is really, I mean, do you think that the Sixers are better off without him? Like, do you think the Sixers are better with Embiid? Because I'm gonna say it right now, if the Sixers had Harden, I don't think the Nets or us are beating them.
The Sixers with Harden would be terrifying. I don't know what they would have had to give up. I assume a lot, but Harden and Embiid would be much, much scarier to me than Simmons and Embiid because when we played Embiid, we're guarding Embiid with our whole team and fouling him. And whenever he wants to pass out to an open guy that isn't Ben Simmons, they can get a pretty open shot. So if you add Harden in there, it's a disaster. But the Nets, I think so far, have done well. They've lost some games, but like I think that big three unit is showing more signs that they can play together than I expected. I'm still holding out hope that, like, you know, when the Celtics got Kyrie, they got off to a super fast start. Like everything was the Garden was Eden. And then by the playoffs, by the end of the year, it got to be like a really bad scenario. So if they keep losing because they're not playing defense and some drama starts to come out that way, then maybe this team falls apart. But the trajectory they're on right now is scary. They're good.
I think that the trajectory they're going on right now is that they'll be fine, but they need to figure it out. And at the end of the day, like playing team basketball matters. That's why the Heat beat us last year. They played better team basketball than us. We're much more talented than them. And here we are, like kind of on the opposite side of that, where if we can gel and if we can have better team chemistry and we can move the ball around better than the Nets, that might put us over the edge. So yeah, I'm not too worried about them just yet.
No, it's been fun to watch them as well. So you take it for what it is. It's the NBA. It's the greatest show on earth. We've got 4 games in the next week. Hopefully, we're supposed to play the Spurs on Wednesday, and I don't think that's going to happen because they've had a couple like COVID protocols in a row. And I think it's expected that we won't play them again. The team, like Brad said, like I don't want to fly to Texas until they say that we're definitely playing. So I don't think the team has even left yet.
Yeah.
But the Bulls were supposed to play the Grizzlies, I think, on Wednesday, and that game is already canceled. And so what people I've been hearing or saying is that we have to make up a game against the Bulls this year. We played them on Monday. Their Wednesday game is canceled. Our Wednesday game is probably canceled, and our team is still in Chicago. So I'm hearing a lot of people say we should just make up the Bulls game on Wednesday, which I would be a huge fan of. They're saying they might try and do that like later in the season, like trying to like the first half to see how it plays out, and the second half you make up all the games. But I don't want a super heavy schedule like right at the end. Like I would love for us, if they can work this out, to have a game on Wednesday regardless. If it's the Spurs, I think we'll handle the Spurs pretty well. Nothing on that team that scares me too much.
DeRozan kind of kills us every time.
They're just like a team at a time, though. Like it's a dunk contest with Rob Williams, like against the Spurs. I think that team is like a couple years overdue for a rebuild, unfortunately. Then the Lakers on Saturday. That'll be super fun to have us with Kemba, Brown, and Tatum against the Lakers. I would expect the Lakers to be able to pull out a win there, but we have played really well against the Lakers, at least last year. Yeah. So it's going to be a great game. And then rounding out, we have the Warriors and Kings, which the Warriors either put up 130 or 80 each game, it seems like. And the Kings, I know nothing about this season.
The Kings, they're not terrible. Obviously Tyrese, like being a promising rookie, helps them. They kind of moved away from Bagley and kind of relied a lot more on their wings and Hield and Fox, and they have a lot more identity now. I think they're a dangerous team. The Lakers game, this has been us for the last few years, where like we're one of the few teams in the league that can throw multiple guys at LeBron. We put Tatum on LeBron, Brown on LeBron. Like they can take, you can put Marcus Smart on him to see if you can just get under skin a little bit. So that's why I don't mind our chances against the Lakers. Like obviously AD is going to be a problem, but AD is going to be a problem for everybody, So it's not like a crazy big deal. I think that it's not out of the realm possibilities that the Lakers might not even show up motivated for it. And we blew them out, I think, a couple times last year. So I feel pretty good about that. I think that the inconsistent, or I guess the not knowing who we're going to play on Wednesday and not knowing if there's going to be a game, I think we've just been so screwed by COVID stuff. If any other team loses their best player for like 17 days, it just in a 72 game season, it's very, very difficult to get over that. If we have to like have this like are we playing or we're not playing thing and then lose to like the Bulls because of that or something, it's just another way in which like we're getting kind of screwed. So yeah, I think that the front part of that is really going to determine whether or not we're going into that Lakers game with a good attitude.
Yeah, a week off before a Lakers game would be a little bit tough, but maybe for guys like Tatum, who's just getting
Coming
over illness, and Kemba obviously didn't play in the second game of the back-to-back. Yep. So rest is nice, but we've had a lot of rest recently.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Hopefully we get 4 games in before our next show. Hopefully we play on Wednesday, but there's no telling right now. That is going to do it for this week on Double Take Celtics. You can subscribe on iTunes at Celtics Double Take, or go find Double Take on YouTube for extra credit. Yes, you can follow the Double Take Show on Instagram. James, you got any last words?
Agent P, we miss you. Get well soon, buddy.
Get well soon. Fast PP, P Rabbit. Peace out. Love it. Go Celtics. See you next week.
Take care.